I still remember the exact moment my card was declined in the middle of dinner, while my entire in-law family sat across from me watching in silence, and my mother-in-law slowly set her wine glass down and smiled like she had. I'd been waiting for it to happen all night. I felt every eye on me, the waiter, standing there awkwardly, my husband, not saying a word. And then Linda leaned forward and said, "Maybe you should check your balance first." Emily, the way she said it wasn't concern, it was certainty, like she already knew something I didn't. My face burned, but something colder settled in my chest, because that wasn't embarrassment. That was a warning. If this story speaks to your heart, or truly resonates with you, take a second to subscribe and tell me where you're watching. From your city, your country, and your local time. I always read them. And it reminds me, I'm not alone. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and that night at a simple family dinner was the moment I realized my own husband and his prosecute. Parents had been controlling my life in ways I never imagined, and it was the night everything in my marriage began to unravel. But to understand how I got there, you have to go back to the small details. I ignored the first time my banking app logged me out unexpectedly, the first time Daniel insisted on helping organize our finances, the first time Linda casually mentioned a number that only I should have known at the time. I told myself it was coincidence that I was overthinking, that this was what marriage looked like, sharing responsibility, trusting each other. I wanted to believe that so badly that I ignored the feeling in my gut every time something didn't add up. Every time Daniel brushed off my questions with a quick smile and a kiss on my forehead saying, "Babe, you worry too much." I wanted to be the easy wife, the trusting one, the one who didn't make everything complicated. So I let it go. I let a lot of things go until that night, when my card didn't just fail me, it exposed something much bigger. Because when I finally pulled out my phone and tried to log into my account right there at the table, my password didn't work. And when I hit reset, the verification code never came to my phone, and that's when Linda tilted her head slightly, watching me struggle like it was entertainment, and said softly, "Oh, honey, maybe it's already been taken care of." That was the moment my confusion turned into something sharper, something colder, because people don't say things like that unless they know exactly what's happening. And suddenly, every small moment, every strange comment, every quiet look between Daniel and his parents started lining up into something I couldn't ignore anymore. And as I sat there pretending to stay calm, I realized this wasn't just about a declined card, this was about control. And the terrifying part wasn't that they had access to my money, it was how long they had been doing it without me noticing, and I had no idea yet just how far it actually went. I did not argue at the table, I did not ask questions, I did not give them the reaction they were clearly waiting for. Instead, I forced a small smile, apologized to the waiter, and paid with a different card while my hands stayed steady, but inside something had already shifted because I was no longer confused. I was watching carefully, every glance, every word, every tiny detail, and the moment we got back into the car, I stayed quiet. Daniel drove like nothing had happened, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually near the center console, like this was just another normal night. But I could feel it, the tension, the silence that was too controlled, too deliberate. And when we pulled into the driveway, he finally said it probably just flagged something unusual. "I will take a look tomorrow at work." His tone was smooth, practiced too quick, and that was when I knew he already had an answer prepared before I even asked the question. I nodded like I believed him and walked inside ahead of him, my mind already racing through possibilities. But I did not go to bed that night. Instead, I sat on the edge of the couch with my phone in my hand, staring at the banking app login screen, trying again and again, knowing it would not work. And when password reset failed for the third time, I did something I should have done hours earlier. I called the bank. The automated system picked up, asking for my information, and I answered every question with a calm voice that did not match the pounding in my chest. When the representative finally came on the line, I kept it simple. I said, "I think there is a problem with my account access." And there was a pause, just a second too long, before she responded with a tone that immediately made my stomach drop. She said, "Ma'am, I see multiple authorized users on this account. Can you confirm the names?" And for a second I could not speak because I already knew what she was about to say. But hearing it out loud was something else entirely. She listed them slowly, clearly, Daniel Carter. And then, without hesitation, Linda Carter and Richard Carter. My grip tightened on the phone so hard my fingers started to ache, and I said there must be a mistake. I never added anyone else to my account, and the silence on the other end told me everything before she even spoke again. She said, according to our records, the authorization was submitted and approved 6 months ago with signed documentation, and I felt something inside me go completely still because 6 months ago I was on a work trip in Chicago for 3 days. I had not signed anything. I had not even checked my account during that time, and suddenly every small moment came rushing back the way Daniel insisted on handling paperwork while I was traveling the way he said he would take care of a few financial updates for convenience, the way Linda kept asking casual questions about my savings, like she was just making conversation. It was not casual. It was planned, every single part of it, and I forced myself to stay calm as I asked the representative to email me copies of everything, every form, every signature, every change made to the account, and when she agreed, I thanked her like this was routine, like this was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. But the moment the call ended, I did not feel panic. I felt something colder, something sharper, because this was not just about access, this was about control. They had inserted themselves into my financial life without my knowledge, without my consent. And the worst part was they had been confident enough to use it openly right in front of me, like I would never notice, like I would never question it. And as I sat there in the quiet living room with the house completely still, I realized something that changed everything. I was not going to confront them, not yet, because if they were bold enough to do this, then there was more they had not shown me yet, and I needed to see all of it before I made my move. And that was when I opened my email and the documents come through, and the first thing I noticed was not the extra names on my account. It was the signature at the bottom of the authorization form, because it looked like mine, but it was not written by me. And that was the moment I understood. This was not just betrayal. This was something much bigger, and I was only seeing the beginning of it. I stared at the signature for a long time, longer than I should have, tracing the curves of each letter with my eyes, like if I looked hard enough it would somehow turn into something familiar, but it never did because it was not mine. It was close enough to fool a system, close enough to pass a glance, but not close enough to fool me. And that was when something inside me shifted completely, because this was no longer about suspicion. This was proof someone had signed my name on legal documents, given full access to my money without me even knowing. And I should have felt panic, I should have felt fear, but instead I felt clarity, a sharp, steady kind of clarity that made everything else fall into place. Because if they had done this once, then they had done more, and I needed to know how far it dangers went before I made a single move. So I opened the rest of the files the bank had sent, and I went through them one by one, slowly, carefully, like I was building a timeline in my head. Dates, time, authorization logs. And there it was, the exact day, 6 months ago, the day I was in Chicago, presenting at a conference, the day Daniel had texted me, saying he would handle a few minor financial updates for us so I could focus on work. I remembered smiling at that message, feeling grateful, feeling lucky, that I had a husband who supported me, who took things off my plate so I would not have to stress. And now I was staring at the document that proved exactly what he had done with that trust, and it did not stop there, because as I kept reading, I noticed transaction patterns small. At first, transfers that were easy to overlook, amounts under $1,000 spaced out over weeks, then gradually increasing $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, until it became impossible to ignore, and yet I had not noticed because I had stopped checking regularly. I had trusted him to handle things, and that trust had been used like an open door. And then I saw something that made my chest tighten: a scheduled transfer set for the following day. A large one, larger than anything before, enough to drain most of the liquid funds in the account. And that was when everything became very real, because this was not something that had already happened. This was something that was about to happen. And if I did nothing, they would succeed. I leaned back slowly, my mind running through every option, every reaction. I could have confronting Daniel, exposing everything, walking into his parents' house, and demanding answers. But every version of that ended the same way. Denial, manipulation, excuses. They would twist it, they would make it seem like a misunderstanding, like something I had agreed to, and I would lose control of the situation before I even understood it completely. So I did the opposite of what they expected. Stayed quiet. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and forced my breathing to slow down, because this was not the moment to react. This was the moment to think. And then I picked up my phone again and called the bank back. This time I did not ask questions. I gave instructions. I told them I wanted additional security measures placed on my account immediately. I told them I suspected unauthorized activity, and I wanted every alert, every flag, every protective layer activated, and the representative on the line asked if I wanted to revoke access for the additional users. And I paused just long enough to consider it, because that would have been the obvious move, the safe move, but it would also warn them, and if they were planning something bigger, I would never see it coming, so I said no, not yet. I want the account monitored. I want any large transaction to trigger immediate review and temporary hold. And there was another pause on the line before she confirmed it was done, and as I ended the call, I felt that same cold clarity settle deeper, because now I was no longer reacting. I was setting the stage, and somewhere in this house, Daniel was moving around like everything was normal. Like I was still the same person who trusted him without question, and maybe that was my advantage because he had no idea that I had already seen everything. No idea that by this time tomorrow, the move they were planning would not just fail, it would expose them completely. And as I stood there in the quiet kitchen, I realized something else, something even more unsettling. This was too calculated, too precise to be a one-time decision. This had been planned carefully, step by step, over months, maybe longer. And that meant there was a part of this I still did not understand yet. And whatever that part was, I was about to find out the moment they tried to take everything. I slept that night, but not in the way I used to. I lay still beside Daniel, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, memorizing it like it belonged to a stranger, because in a way it did. The man I thought I knew would not have done this, would not have signed my name. He would not have let his parents reach into something that was mine without even telling me, but the man lying next to me had, and the worst part was how normal everything felt on the surface. Like this was just another quiet night in a marriage that looked perfectly fine from the outside. When morning came, I moved through the routine like nothing had changed. I made coffee, I answered emails, I even smiled when Daniel kissed my cheek before leaving for work and said I would check on the account today. Do not worry about it. And I nodded like I believed him again, like I had not already seen everything. And the moment the door closed behind him, I felt the shift again, that cold, steady focus that had replaced the panic, because this was the day they were going to try it. The scheduled transfer was set for late afternoon, and I knew they would not hesitate. They had already gotten comfortable. They had already tested the limits, and today they were going to take the biggest step yet. So I positioned myself exactly where I needed to be. I kept my phone within reach at all times. I refreshed my email every few minutes. I checked the account alerts I had set up the night before, and I waited, not anxiously but deliberately, like I was watching a clock count down to something inevitable. And around 1:30 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Once a new login attempt detected from a device I did not recognize. My eyes locked on the screen and I did not move. I just watched as the second notification came through, access granted, then a third initiating transfer. And that was when my heartbeat finally picked up. Not from fear, but from confirmation, because they were doing it exactly like I knew they would. No hesitation, no caution. Just confidence, like they believed there was no way this could fail. And for a moment, I let myself imagine what they were seeing on their end, the numbers, the available balance, the assumption that everything was still under their control. Then the fourth notification came through, transfer flagged for review and held pending verification, and I exhaled slowly because that was the moment the plan shifted from theirs to mine. I knew what would happen next. I knew there would be confusion, maybe frustration, maybe even panic, as they tried again and again to push it through, only to be stopped each time by the system they never expected to turn against them. And right on cue, my phone lit up with Daniel calling me. I let it ring twice, before answering, keeping my voice steady. "Hello, hey," he said. Too quickly, too sharp. "There is something wrong with the account. I think the bank froze it. Do you know anything about that?" I paused just long enough to make it believable. "No, what do you mean it is saying?" "The transfer cannot go through," he said. And I could hear the tension now, the control slipping just slightly, like he was trying to stay calm. But something was not going the way he planned. And I sat there listening to him, realizing that this was the first time he was reacting instead of controlling to the situation. And I said, maybe you should call them and check like you said you would, and there was a silence on the line. A brief one. But enough for me to feel it. The shift, the realization that something was not adding up. And then he said, yeah, I will do that, and hung up quickly. And I did not move. I did not call him back. I did not explain anything, because this was not over. This was only the beginning of something much bigger. As I sat there with the notifications still open on my screen, I realized there was one more thing I needed to confirm. One more piece of this that did not fit yet, because if they were this confident, this careless, then there had to be a reason behind it. Something. They were counting on something I had not uncovered yet, and whatever that was, I was about to find out very soon. I did not call him back after that. I did not need to, because I already knew exactly what he was doing on the other end of that call. He was not calling the bank, he was calling them, and I did not have to guess because less than 10 minutes later my phone lit up again, this time with Linda's name, and for a second I just stared at it, letting it ring, watching the screen vibrate across the table, because that alone told me everything I needed to know. She did not call me unless it was intentional, unless it was controlled, unless she believed she was still in charge. And when I finally answered, I kept my voice soft, almost concerned. Hello, Emily, what is going on with the account? Her tone was tight, not panicked yet, but strained like she was. Holding something back, I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch just long enough before I responded. I am not sure. Daniel said he would check it. And there it was, a pause, longer this time, heavier, and I could almost hear the shift in her breathing as she recalculated something in her mind, as if she was trying to understand how much I knew and how much I did not. And then she said, well, we were just trying to move some funds around to help with an investment opportunity you should have. Told me, I said calmly, and that was when her tone changed, just slightly sharper, more defensive. We thought it would be easier this way, less stress for you. Emily, you have always been so busy. And I closed my eyes for a second, because there it was, the justification to the narrative they had built to make this acceptable to themselves. They were helping me, they were managing things for me, they were making decisions in my best interest without ever asking me. And I let out a small breath before saying, I will call the bank and figure it out. And I hung up before she could respond, because I was not interested in their version of the story anymore. I already had the truth, and it was written in every document, every transaction, every signature that was not mine. And within minutes, Daniel called again. His voice different now, not controlled, not smooth. There was urgency in it. Emily, did you change something on the account? I kept my tone even. No. Why? What is happening? It is locked, he said. Completely locked. I cannot access anything. Neither can my parents. They are saying it is flagged for fraud. And I let the silence sit there between us, just for a second longer than normal, before I said, maybe that means something was not right, and I could feel it on the other end. The tension snapping into place, because this was the first moment he realized I was not confused anymore. I was not behind. I was not reacting. I was already ahead of him, and his next words came slower, more careful. What are you talking about? I looked down at the document still open on my screen, the forged signature, the authorization forms, the transfer logs. And I said, I spoke to the bank last night, Daniel. I know about the account, and there it was. The moment everything shifted completely, the silence on the line was no longer controlled. It was heavy, uncertain, and for the first time since this started, he did not have an immediate answer. And then he said, Emily, listen, I can explain. And I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was predictable, because that is what people say. When they run out of control, they reach for explanation, as if words can undo what has already been done. But I did not interrupt him. I did not argue. I just listened as he started talking about misunderstandings, about helping, about managing finances together, and every word only made it clearer that this was never meant to be temporary. This was not a mistake. This was a system they had built quietly over time. And the part that unsettled me the most was not what he was saying. It was It was not saying he never once denied it. He never once questioned how it happened. He just tried to reshape it into something acceptable. And that was when I realized the final piece I had been missing. This was not just about money. This was about control in a way that went far beyond a bank account. And if I had not caught it when I did, if I had not made that call the night before, they would have taken everything without hesitation and I would have been the last person to know. And as I sat there, listening to him talk, I understood something with absolute clarity. This conversation was not the confrontation. This was only the beginning of something much bigger, and whatever came next was not going to be on their terms anymore. Life feels quieter now. Not perfect, not completely healed, but clearer in a way I never knew I needed. The house is different. The silence is no longer heavy. It is honest. I wake up without checking my phone in fear of what I might find, and for the first time in a long time, I know exactly where I stand. Not just financially, but emotionally and mentally. Daniel is gone, not in some dramatic way, not with shouting or chaos, but with a quiet finality that matched everything I had learned about him in the end. He chose distance over accountability, and his parents followed the same path. The access they once had is permanently revoked, not just from my accounts but from my life entirely. And what surprised me the most was not how much I lost, but how much lighter I felt after letting them go, because the truth is, they did not just take money. They took space, they took trust, they took parts of me that I did not realize I had been giving away slowly over time. And getting it back did not happen overnight. It came in small moments, changing passwords, reviewing documents, asking questions. I used to be too afraid to ask, and learning that protecting yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. I used to think love meant trust without limits, but now I understand that real love respects boundaries. It does not quietly cross them and call it care. And if there is one thing this experience taught me, it is to listen to that quiet voice inside the one that notices when something feels off, even when everything looks fine on the surface, because that voice is not doubt, it is awareness and ignoring. It comes at a cost. I had to learn that the hard way. But maybe you do not have to if you are listening to this and something in your life feels similar. Even if you cannot fully explain it yet, please do not dismiss it. Do not silence yourself just to keep the peace. Ask questions, look closer, protect what is yours, not just your money, but your time, your energy, your sense of self, because once those things are taken, it is not always easy to get them back. And you deserve to feel secure in your own life. You deserve clarity, you deserve respect, and most importantly, you deserve to define your own value without anyone else quietly rewriting it behind you. Back, I truly believe that sometimes God or the universe places these moments in front of us not to break us, but to wake us up, to show us where we have been too trusting, too quiet, too willing to ignore the truth. And even though it hurts in the moment, there is something powerful about seeing clearly again, about choosing yourself again and building something stronger from that awareness. So if you have made it this far, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and for sharing this space with me. I hope this story reminds you that you are not alone in acting what you feel, and that it is never too late to take your power back. If this meant something to you, you can share your story in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is, where you are, because I would truly love to hear from you and connect with you in a real way. And if you want to follow more stories like this, you can subscribe and stay with me on this journey. My name is Emily Carter. I am 29 years old, and the one lesson I want to leave you with is this: never ignore the moment you feel something is wrong, because that moment might be the one that saves you.